Hey everyone! Alright, so I know I said I was going to talk about favorite books and then some goals, but the favorite books got a little long, so I decided I would separate them. So, in 2023, I read 211 books, and my original goal for 2023 had been to hit 100 books, because I think in 2022, I had gotten like 93 or 96 or really close to 100, so that was the goal. Of the 211, there were probably 110, 115 volumes of manga, light novels, art books, graphic novels, that sort of thing. So not to say that they're easier, maybe just that they're quicker reads. So I was able to do, like 2 or 3 volumes in a day, and they take like 30, 45 minutes if they're the standard volume, if they're longer, obviously. They're quicker reads compared to a novel for me. This year, I'm going to aim for maybe trying to hit like 110 books. And obviously, if I manage to hit 200 again, which has never happened before, and would definitely be, this is definitely the best reading year in terms of the number of books that I read, probably ever, but at the very least, in a very long time. I figure I'll keep it at like 110 just to maybe be a little more realistic. And then I'm also prioritizing a lot of my owned books. So that's kind of the overall numbers goal. Getting into some of them, like, nitty-gritty, I counted all of my physical TBR books, which includes a lot of my books, or all of my books that I haven't read, and then some of the books that my husband and I kind of share, and then a couple of his books as well. I just decided to DNF a series, so this is not quite accurate. I have about 510. It's like 507 actually, but I think I forgot a couple, so we'll just say 510 physical books that I haven't read. I think my first and main priority is to get that number down to about 400. So that's 100 and some books right there. So that could definitely be the majority of my whole year of reading. Again, I have some manga that I need to read, so that will be a little bit quicker for some of it. So that could be the majority, and will probably end up being the majority of my reading for this year, is just my owned TBR. But I do have books coming in like subscription boxes, and then if I get anything from the library, I don't really know that I count those towards my like physical TBR though. That'll be the majority of my reading for the year, but I do want to make sure that I get some of these other goals taken care of. So my second goal is to really limit the number of books that I buy and that are coming into my house this year. Last year I had about 300 books that came in, and some of them were book boxes, some of them my parents will read books and give them to me, some of them were gifted, some of them were books that I went out and bought myself. There's a Kinokuniya just opened up like 20 minutes away from my house, and for those of you that don't know, it's like a big manga store. It's a Japanese company, but they have just shelves of manga, both in English and in Japanese. They also have like light novels and that sort of thing, but then they also have like, not action figures, figurines. They have like figurines for like popular manga. They have like a whole Ghibli section, but they also have like stationery and pens and pencils, just like a whole like gift section. And so it's a really cool store, but they had a ton of events, like a soft opening, and then a grand opening, and then a sale, and then I took my sister, and so that's where a lot of like my manga got picked up last year. And then there's right 2 minutes down the road from there is a used bookstore that we go to all the time. So we went there, and I picked up I think for like my birthday, I picked up like 10 or 15 books from there. There just need to be fewer books coming in to my house. maybe more like a conscientious, intentional kind of bringing them in. And that's the true goal, is to be way more intentional with what I'm buying and knowing that I'll be able to read it within the year. Because if I'm not reading it within the year, then it can wait. I think 35 or 40 of them were books that were like special editions of the stuff that I've already read. One of my favorite series as a kid growing up, or one of my favorite authors of all time, really still today, is Tamara Pierce, and I found out that there were editions, like hardback editions, published of her first 2 quartets, the Alana series, and then the Dane series, which follows that, which is the Immortals. They're not special editions, but they're really hard to find. They're not in print anymore, and so I was like, oh, like, this is, like, a favorite of all time, and, like, you can find them on, like, Abe Books for, like, $10 a piece. It was stuff like that was coming in. I did also buy, like, sequels to subscription box books that I wanted to continue in the series, just somehow always having more books. So my rules for this really limited low buy: I'm allowed to buy sequels for series that I'm already reading. For example, I have, I think, 5 books of the Throne of Glass series, and I'm going to do a reread. I don't know if I'll start today or soon. I want to try and reread all of the books that I have before the Third Crescent City comes out. I need to go get the last 2 or 3 or however many. Once I get to those books, I'll go buy them. And then for, like, some of the manga, like, I have, like, 3 volumes of Witch Hat Atelier and 21 or 22 volumes of Haikyuu, and, like, those are ones that I would like to continue, I think. I'm also allowing myself to buy BookBox sequel pre-orders, since those are, like, a designated time, and I am so not about that that resale life. Like, oh, it's kind of rough. And then I have 4 subscription box books each month. So I have the Fairy Loot YA, I have the Fairy Loot Adult, I have the Illumicrate, and then I just joined Broken Binding. I had seen that was like a year, like an 18-month, like a super long waiting period for joining their subscription. And so I put my name down and got an invite. Wait, that faster than I thought I would. So I was like, okay, well, Fairy Loot and Illumicrate are, I'm sure most people know, those 2 are new releases. And then Broken Binding does completed series. So you get, like, 1 book each month, and it's a trilogy or a duology, or sometimes it's longer. So it's completed series, and when you skip, you would skip the entire series. They ask that you skip the entire series. So if it's not one that you're interested in, which this one was, otherwise I would have skipped and just waited a little bit more. But I was like, that actually sounds really good and what I would be interested in. So I was like, okay, let's go for it. The other rule would be to only go to the bookstore at specific times during the year. So, like, quarterly at most. But then, like, my husband is also a big reader, and so, like, allowing us to splurge a little bit for our birthdays. And then around Christmas time, I'm sure most people know about the big Barnes & Noble hardback sale. We went to that, like 3 weeks ago. I think I actually got a lot of rewards. So maybe I'll get some, like, prepaid books. So only going to bookstores at specific times, and then, like, when we do go, like, take advantage of the sales, like, kind of time it, like the hardback sale. And then I think there's a members sale for Kinokuniya where everything is like 20% off, and then really take advantage of our used bookstore. We have a lot of credit there. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. Definitely going there. And then I do have a Pango account, but I really use that more for if there are resale books that I want. Like, it took me forever to get Defend the Dawn, the sequel to Defy the Night. So, like, that was took forever. So I kind of like to hoard my Pango Books for when I come across an edition, mostly so I don't have to pay for it out of pocket, and it's like, here you go, here's my Pango Bucks. Feels a little bit like Monopoly money, but so I don't think I specified a number on my how much I'm limiting my incoming books. So ideally, about 300 came in last year. Ideally, I would half that. So have it be like 150. That's still a lot, but I'm thinking that unless I skip books for my subscription boxes, that'll be 48. Since I have 4 of them, I can put the remainder to good use as I so choose. Again, like really limiting that. In my mind, my current goal is to have fewer than 10 come in each month. That puts me at 120. We'll see how that goes. Like, I know I'll have 4 each month, so that leaves 6 for the rest of the time, which it may end up reflecting like quarterly or like every couple months instead of 10 each month. It might be like 4 each month and then 15 the next time or something. Hopefully it'll balance out to be between 120 and 150. I think that's exceptionally doable. We'll see how much I get through, especially with the manga. So Haikyuu is completed at 45 volumes, and I have 22 of those. So that could account for 23. Sometimes I go and they're not there, and that's fine. I have 3 volumes of Witch Hat Atelier, but I think 11 are out. But then the rest, almost all of the rest of the manga that I'm working through, I've caught up, so it would be like a volume here or there throughout the year. Stuff like that, I think, would be just kind of like a one-off, other than the main big series that I'm working through. The number is between like 10 each month or 120 to 150 total for the year. We'll see how it goes. I'm also subscribed to KU and to Libro FM. I listen mainly like on my way to work and everything, but I was terrible about listening to books last year. I listened to like 3. And so I just need to get back to it. I just downloaded a bunch with credits. And I've been using KU a lot lately. I want to make sure that I'm using those. I don't generally tend to count those towards my like TBR list, because it's like the KU feels more like the library, because you can only take so many out and then you like return them to get new ones and that sort of thing. For those of you that don't know, Libro FM, it's like Audible, like an audiobook subscription service where you get a credit each month, and the majority of the time most books are 1 credit. Sometimes they're 2 if they're like huge or they're really popular or expensive or whatever. I think I've only had that happen to me 1 time though. And then you get a discount on everything else if you're a member. And it sounds like 20%, 10-20%, I don't know the exact number. Most of the time I just use credits, and it's the same price as Audible, but it doesn't support Amazon. It supports like indie bookstores, and you can go in and select a specific bookstore that you want, or you can just join, and I think they have just like a general fund, and they kind of donate to all of the bookstores. So I think what I want to do with KU and with Libro FM is do like a quarterly wrap up. I don't know if I want to do quarterly or monthly. I think I just want to do quarterly. I think it depends on how fast I listen to the Libro FM ones. Mostly just to make sure I'm using them. Like the Libro FM, I don't think I would cancel, but the KU, I might. Or like just put it on pause until I'm like ready to start reading them again. Why pay this $12 or whatever for each month if I'm not using it? Just being more conscious of that. I feel like that's like a lot of like sub goals for limiting my buy list. Yeah, I'm going to keep a running list of any book that sounds interesting to me, to kind of just make sure that if I do go into the bookstore, it's something that I'm like really interested in, and kind of just because sometimes, like, you know, you're like, if you've ever done that and you're like, okay, I'm not interested in this anymore. I need to go turn the light on. That's better. You can actually see me. I'm not just like a pale face in the darkness. So I want to keep a running list, and if there's any that I'm like less certain of by the time I get around to said list, then they'll just end up being library books. I do love my library. I have, since I've been focusing on my own TBR, I'm not reaching for library books as much, partly just to like focus on it, but when I do, like if I don't have credits for my Libro.fm and I want an audiobook, I do really take advantage of my library. So maybe I'll include that in the quarterly wrap-ups as well as any library books that I've gotten. I generally use Libby. I don't usually go over to the library, even though it's like 5-10 minutes down the road. So my third goal is to read a little bit more intentionally, like I discussed, like getting my physical TBR down. I also want to, part of that is also catching up to my BookBox books. So I joined Fairy Loot like halfway through 2021, and there are still books. I think there's only 2 books that I just haven't prioritized. And then they had a sale of like previous boxes, and I bought one of those. But now I also have all of the sequels to those books. I would like to like actually complete the series that I have from those book boxes. And I do also want to really try and keep up with the Broken Binding, like as they arrive at my house. They're completed series, so like, and I'll be getting the next book really quickly. Making sure I stay on top of that from the get-go is probably a pretty good habit to get into, and just like staying on top of it is, I think, probably the only way I'm going to like allow myself to keep going with the subscription. So I really want to make sure I'm being really intentional about reading the books that were coming in and tackling a lot of the books that are already on my shelf. And then I would also like to complete the series where I have all the books. So like I have all of the Prison Healer. I've read the first one and I started the second one, but I either wasn't in the mood or life happened and I just had to put it down and never came back to it. I also have a middle grades series, which is right up here. You probably can't read it, but it's called The Vampirates. It's from like probably like the late 2000s, early 2010s, and I have all 6 books, but I think I've only read 2 or 3 of them, so I want to finish that. Like I was saying earlier, I want to reread all of my Sarah Janet books, and like preferably before the 3rd Crescent City comes out. I don't know if that's possible because it's the 11th, and I got to 19 days, whatever. I've read everything except for the last few books of Throne of Glass, so it's like that would all be a reread. But yeah, I don't know if I would be done in time to prevent any spoilers. I just have to stay off the internet, I think. But yeah, and then there's a couple other, like I have the Rebecca Ross A River Enchanted series and things like that, where I'm just like, I have the second book, like, and I just haven't picked it up. I just want to make sure that I'm actually completing the series that I have. Part of like the catching up to book boxes and stuff kind of leads into my 4th goal, which is to tackle some reading projects. Like I think I want to go by, I don't know if I want to go by year, by like every 6 months of books, like BookBox books, and like do a video on it. In the recent Barnes & Noble sale, I just got this copy of the Iliad, I think it's the first copy that's been translated by a woman. So I really want to read this version of it. I read it back in college, and I started rereading it a couple years ago and got like 100 pages into it, but it's dense, and sometimes like for stuff like this, you just want like a buddy or like an academic adult to help you along. I think this is supposed to be like way more approachable, but like it's stuff like this where I'm like, I want to reread this, but in that I also want to include a bunch of the, like, I think I have like Women of Sparta, like a bunch of the Greek retellings that I want to like include when I reread this, and kind of just do like a whole like Greek themed video and just like stuff like that, kind of just like tackle a bunch of the stacks of books. Before I counted everything, I like went through and reorganized all of like my main TBR shelf. I have a stack of books like from my mom that I might read all at the same time, and like some sci-fi that I want to read, some middle grade that I want to read, kind of just like grouping things together and like tackling them and reading them and sitting here and talking about it. And then my fifth and final goal, I don't think 5 is an accurate number here, but we're just going to call it 5 because that's what it is in my notes. My fifth and final goal is to reread some of my favorites. I want to reread Howl's Moving Castle. There's a book by Sherwood Smith. I think it's actually technically a duology, but it's printed together. It's called Crown Jewel. I want to reread Lord of the Rings, and I actually just got that on audio because Andy Serkis is narrating it. I think they released it a few months ago, but it's the trilogy, and then The Hobbit, I think, and then The Silmarillion. And I have had The Silmarillion for probably decades, maybe not decades, plural, but a decade at the very least. Actually, 2 decades is probably accurate. Oops. I've just never picked it up. And I started a reread of Lord of the Rings a couple years ago, and got like halfway through Fellowship and just didn't, like, had to go back to work because it was during the pandemic, and was like, okay, well, I gotta put this down. So I want to reread that. I want to reread Red Rising and then the continuation of everything. I've been wanting to reread Sabriel, like the Old Kingdom series. I got a little fix of it when I read Terciel and Eleanor, because that's like the prequel of her parents. I got a little fix, and it was so nice to be in that world again. And I have all of the books. I need to finish the short story collection, and then I want to read Clariel, which is like a kind of a prequel book. I didn't love it, and I want to reread it to see if I even want to keep it on my shelf. But it's stuff like that, where it's just like old favorites, and like being back in like an old favorite world that is something that I want to do again. So yeah, those are the 5-ish 2024 goals that I have. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll keep some stats and see how we do. Obviously, I have a reading tracker and all that kind of stuff. I think having a channel and like making videos will be a good way to kind of round things up for like KU and Libro FM, and just an overall, it'll kind of help keep me accountable. So that'll be nice. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know some of your goals down in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!